agenda.
Or not.
Or not even have it, since we already just presented it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of silly. Why didn't we just overlap?
We were trying to overlap them.
We didn't have a quorum really from.
Well, Commissioner Barkley, the chair of the Finance Committee, ran the Finance Committee so efficiently that it ended, the other stuff ended earlier, and they decided that they just would like to get it over and done with. That's what happened. But we don't have to do that.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, let's look at the action items then. The July 19th meeting minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you just call for public comment, just for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have anybody here who would like to make public comment for the planning committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Meeting minutes of July 19th.
Move
May I have a
approval.
motion? Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any changes? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. TDP progress report. Who's doing that? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a, all right.
Good morning, everyone. Back for round two is the TDP again, this time before you as an action item. Staff recommends approval of the progress report document to be voted on at the board meeting as an action item next week. I just wanted to briefly go over just a very quick summary review of what we talked about last time before opening the floor for discussion and questions. Of course, the TDP serves as our 10-year vision. This is an annual document that is submitted to FDOT that includes our priority projects that we want to make sure are included in there so they are eligible for future state funding opportunities. This is, of course, also coordinated with transit elements of all other plans, such as the LRTP and TBARTA's master plan. Our last major update was in 2015, so this is the second progress report that has been done since that major update. This allows us to provide progress on our various projects, as well as add new priorities that come forward, and as well as update our financial projections. And this is just a very brief list of highlights. Of course, there are many more projects outlined in the TDP than this, but such things are covered as the Central Avenue BRT, all of our operational enhancements, downtown and Clearwater Beach investments, regional farebox project, and sustainable bus replacements. And in addition, we also added several priority projects, including the autonomous vehicle pilot and the integrated smartphone app development. And I also wanted to take this time to commend the efforts of our very own Commissioner Johnson, who recently drafted a memo in response to the question, what is really going on to improve transportation in Tampa Bay? And clearly there is a lot going on. So in consultation, virtual consultation with Whitland and with Ford Pinellas and myself, we made sure that his very comprehensive list of projects coordinated with Forward Pinellas priorities and our TDP priority projects to show how the projects going on in Pinellas County are a very important component of the transportation pie of the region. So I just wanted to commend him for his efforts with drafting that memo. And now I'm happy to open the floor up for any questions or comments you have about this year's progress report.
Well, I'm wondering if we can get a copy of that memo. Since you put all that work into it.
Did that get forwarded to the board?
I don't remember.
Did it not? It will be today.
I also sent it to Mr. Blanton, and I don't know whether he forwarded it right now.
I thought sorry.
Okay. Any questions about the TDP report?
It's good to have this update so we know what's going on, and as things change, we need to be kept up to speed on any enhancements or deletions of items on this.
The question I have is, we have a path forward, we have an objective, we have, and it kind of gets to the question about what do we need to do for the region to have improved transit? And does this TDP show us making that progress that we need to be that competitive region, or does it just kind of continue what we're doing? I'm trying to get a handle on the issue of I think the Tampa Bay Partnership doesn't do a good job of saying, this is why we're not competitive in this region relative to transportation. And I must say I haven't totally digested this report, but it seemed to me that this is more just going forward, not really addressing the need to add frequencies to key routes or move that route. So I don't know who can respond to that.
I had the opportunity last Thursday to attend a meeting at USF St. Pete that was chaired by Senator Nelson, and also on the dais were Representative Kathy Castor and Representative Charlie Crist, Mayor George Kretikos, and Mayor Rick Kreisman, and also our very own Commissioner Janet Long. And there were 5 expert speakers who did testimony for the people on the dais, the people who were actually running the meeting. And transportation came up as an extremely important component of, by the way, the issue involved tourist dollars and how do we enhance tourism. And the 5 speakers all were very interested in the transportation component for improving tourism in our region. So there is awareness of it. What I think the key issue is there's not an overall, and I think this is what you're getting at, Commissioner Johnson, there's not an overall plan that addresses this. Everybody knows we need to do it, but there isn't a consistent way to approach the issue. By the way, our own Representative Glenn was there too.
Harry Glenn.
Harry Glenn, yes. So the issue is out there. Everybody knows it, but how do we approach it in a overall fashion is very important, especially when there's top-down influence from, say, the state that wants to build more roads as opposed to do more transportation of other types. So there's a lot of issues out there, and how we approach that is going to continue to be important. We need an overall plan, and I think that's what you're driving at also, Commissioner Johnson.
Well, not so much a plan, but a statement of need or a statement of future need.
This item today is a progress report.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an update on our community bus plan, which is our major TDP, and we do that every 5 years. We do that as coordinated with the MPO, and it becomes the foundation for the transit element of the MPO's priority setting process. So in this TDP, we set out our priorities based on an entire system plan that is based off of the needs of the community. So in this progress report, we are telling FDOT what we've done, what we want to do next, and what are our priorities. These reports then go to them, and when we apply for grants, which is the next item on the agenda, the first question they ask is this in your plan? And so this annual report gives us a chance to say, this is what we finished, this is what we're going to do next, and these are the things that have come up since our major update that we want to put in. So you'll see in next year's planning activities, we'll be looking at that, examining that community bus plan again, and saying, if we started from scratch, what would that look like? How does that fit into the long-range transportation plan? And we get priorities set at the MPO. And then how do we start applying for grants that match what we've set out as our priorities? So the conversation that you're talking about exists in the system plan development. This activity right now, the TDP update, is not the development of the plan itself. It's are we on target with our plan? So just to clear up that conversation is important, but it exists in another space.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this report? Do we need to approve this, or what are we doing?
Yes, it is an action item today.
This would be an action item for the committee to recommend approval by the PSTA board at your next week's board meeting to submit to
I'll make a
everyone.
motion.
So what I understand is that this is complying with our annual or our calendar requirements to FTA.
It is.
FDOT. But it's not really intended to do that. Community needs.
A lot of these projects you're confirming as priorities.
Right.
It's only the ones at the bottom that we're adding because the conversation at the board level has changed, and we've had other projects that have come into play that we'd like to see done. So we'll incorporate all of those. The first five are the things that we have agreed on. The bottom two are things that we've talked about in other forums that we'd like to put into this plan so that we can apply for grants.
Okay, we have
I have a
a
motion.
motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think it's discussion, and I just dug out this article that Janet Long wrote, and says entrenched bureaucracies continue to stymie our efforts to build truly regional plans that can be implemented.
That's right, it said.
And I'm sort of saying that this is that process, but it doesn't get us to the vision that we need to get for a region. And I guess that maybe means that that's what's going to happen at the newly invigorated T-BARTA.
Right.
Mhm.
I don't,
So,
yeah, this is not the visionary plan necessarily. It's, we have that somewhere else, or we will create that somewhere else. This is not designed to be a visionary plan. And by the way, I think she was talking about a body in Hillsborough.
Yeah. It's-
In theory, the new T-BARTA, the new and improved T-BARTA legislation calls for T-BARTA to take on the responsibility of developing a regional transit development plan, which means the planning committee at PSTA in some future date would never ever have this vote or have this discussion, because T-BARTA would be developing a regional plan that would replace this PSTA one. Now, will that ever happen? Who knows? They don't have any money to do it.
Yeah, right. Is this an action item?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, we have
yeah,
a motion and a second.
yeah.
Do you have any further? Go ahead.
You see that we do have our vision. This is the Pinellas County
Right.
vision
Right.
here. As part of our technical work that we did in the community bus plan, we looked at regional connections and what those regional connections would be. Those are the green lines on the map that you see there, which is straight out of the community bus plan. some of these projects that have regional significance, like the Central Avenue BRT, like some of our regional routes that are shown in green, all of those have regional impact, although they are projects that we could implement in the absence of someone else taking that opportunity to implement. So the technical work is done.
I guess one other question. Does this address which route should we be cutting, kind of from the community bus plan? Because we've got one route that was on there that was proposed to be cut, and we decided to kick that down the road.
Well, that is still in our community bus plan.
Okay.
The TDP is focused on what we're building up and takes components of, as you mentioned, the path forward, takes components of the community bus plan. And I've said this before, that the TDP process itself is, and what FDOT requires us to do, just mandates good planning. We've already done that. We would do that anyway. This is our summary of all of our work to the DOT to say, here's what we want you to fund.
I'm in favor of moving this forward. I just think we need to really address some of those issues deeper. Looking on page 9 of this, the 444 has passengers per revenue mile of 0.23, which is the lowest of anything on here by, well, I don't know. The Palm Harbor Dunedin connector is 0.06.
It is the PSTA board's position to maintain operation of the 444 in Penel's Park at the current state, so there are some declarative statements in the community bus plan and this plan that we wanted to try to streamline routes, but you're right, they'll stay in place until decided otherwise.
Now, we did kill the Jolly Trolley for Safety Harbor, which was 0.17, right?
We didn't kill it.
We reallocated it to a regular route, right?
Right. We improve services.
We do discuss the redesign in here, but just as how we've made progress on it.
So call the
Okay.
question.
We have a motion and a second,
Yeah.
Vicki. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, information items, grant discretionary application.
So this is sort of a follow-up to what do we do with this TDP and how does that translate into real projects? And that's where our prioritization of grants comes in. And we just want to bring this to you just as an information item. There is no action. There probably won't be an action until it's time to accept the grants themselves. But this gives you an idea of some grants that we have won recently, and that we've been very successful at. So some of those are, you may have seen in the paper, our redesigned downtown circulator in St. Petersburg. This would add our electric vehicle and also essentially double the service in downtown St. Petersburg between us providing that new electric bus and the looper. And so the DOT accepted our proposal for a service development grant, and that would start that service. It goes from 10 to 5 on weekdays right now. We would now start it at 7 and go to 10 p.m. Again, trying to capture that new emerging market of residential and employment that is downtown St. Petersburg, and become less of a tourist opportunity and more of real transportation. And it fits in very nicely with our Central Avenue BRT, as that isn't designed to go everywhere and be everything. This allows people to get to other destinations within downtown. It is a rare occurrence, in fact, I have never had it happen before, that what you ask for from the DOT that you actually get. So we did the service costs, additional service costs about $600,000 extra a year. We applied for a 50-50 grant, which has a 3-year lifespan from the DOT, and they said, absolutely yes, we will fund this at a full 50%. And so that's pretty amazing. We've also had discussions with the city of St. Petersburg about ongoing operational assistance. And so at the end of the day, the first 3 years, we would pay for about a quarter of that expanded service. And so that's with the grant that we just heard positive news on. Another grant that's in here that recently awarded and that we'll start using soon is at the close of our this year's reporting cycle for the Central Avenue BRT will begin the design phase. And as part of DOT's commitment to that project, they have put into their work program $1 million for the design of the Central Avenue BRT. And so that is also 50-50 match money and is within our allocated reserve that we've put towards that project. And so this is not necessarily new money, it's just portions of the money that are starting to come to us. Some pending grants, things that we have recently applied for but haven't heard on, or that we are planning to apply for. The FTA Low and No Emission Vehicle Program. So we have established a zero emission program and have sent that to FTA for them to help fund phase 2 of that, purchasing about 5 buses. Our Bus and Bus Facilities grant, which is due at near the end of this month, we are applying for 20 hybrid buses. And we have some other grants, security grants and things like that we've applied for and we're waiting to hear on. This is also an opportunity for us to talk to you about our plans going forward. So for those programs that are continual, where every year there's an opportunity to apply for them, like the service development grants, we want to show you that we have a plan for that. So when that notice of funding availability opens up, we know exactly what we're going after. We don't have to have a discussion, we're just putting together the grant. And so we have, for our service development grant, we've established what that next route would be. Again, out of the community bus plan, out of our TDP, we can then, and by telling DOT that this is our plan, they can know what our cycle is. The other grants that we are in the process of applying for, the FTA Capital Investment Grant, the Small Starts Grant for the Central Avenue BRT, again, already in coordination with FTA, and that would be a $21 million ask. It would be matched by the state U-Starts. We've also been talking to the state about that. So those applications are in the works. Again, this gives you an idea of how organized we are, and that we do, we do take a long-term plan of what we are doing next very seriously. I think it helps us achieve the goal of winning these grants, as opposed to having a grant come out and have us say, so what are we going to apply for? This is very strategic.
It's too late.
Yes, so we have really thought out our opportunities.
Yes.
With regard to the low no emission vehicle program, 5.1 million, you said 5 buses out of that, I think. What are they, electric, or are they going to be hybrid under that system?
They would be all electric.
Okay, good.
Under that.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've shown them in that grant is a long-term plan for how we would deploy an electric fleet, and what our funding plan is for that. That includes successive low-no applications, as well as what we plan to apply for under the VW settlement.
Does that include not only the bus purchase itself, but also the related charging equipment?
Yes.
Facilities and so on?
Yes.
Okay.
So we had, if you recall, we did apply for a low-no grant for the initial demonstration project of 2 buses, and we sat down with FTA afterwards and had a feedback session on why we did did not have success on that program. They explained to us, and we went back and we said, this is what they wanted to see was a long-term plan of how we were committed to this technology, and that's what we brought to them this time.
Good.
These are in addition to what's the plan and the capital plan for the financial.
So the presentation that you'll see from Debbie does not make an assumption of discretionary grants. And so any successes here then have a positive impact. So she has been extremely conservative in how she's developed the budget to not include the successful work of the planning commission.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a shout out to the Pinellas County up on line number 2, where we only asked for $58,000 and they decided to give us $68,000. Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner.
I don't know how that
Gerard.
happened.
It's very
Good
nice
job.
of us.
They like this a lot.
That was actually that was a great joint project with the county, and it was the first time that PSTA had applied for the CDBG program. So I would say thank you to Heather
Yeah.
and Jacob for
Thank you.
always looking for new sources of money.
Is it true that they gave us more than we asked for?
Yes, they wanted an additional shelter in a location that wasn't on the original list.
Careful what you pray for, the reporting is ridiculous in that.
Luckily Bonnie's very organized.
People cuss me out all I just had a question, not about this, but about the DW settlement.
Yes.
What's the story with that? Where's it? What's the time frame and all that?
I will turn that over to Henry, because he's been a
Right,
primary
or
contact.
just you might remember that VW got in trouble for doctoring reports about their emissions, and then they have to pay an enormous amount of money, and the amount coming to Florida, they've allocated to all 50 states,
Pretty good.
and it's something like $150 million coming to Florida. And the stated purpose of the primary purpose of the settlement funds coming to Florida is for low emission fleets and vehicles. And actually Duke Energy, our electrical provider, of course, they're very interested in selling electricity and having all of our fine buses run by them instead of paying diesel fuel companies. And so they came to us about making a big, or ask for that. Henry's done a great job working with them and putting together a really good package. Like Cassandra said, we broke up into phases, so they don't want to give us all of our enormous ask. They don't want to totally change our buses. They can do part of them. It's a pretty good thing. The way Duke Energy, they have their own strategy on how to get a hold of these funds, and they are kind of partnering with Florida Electric Power, which is the main power supplier for the eastern half of the state, and FEP is going to identify a transit system. I think it's going to be Broward County. That's going to be their partner, and then on the west coast of Florida, which is Duke's zone, PSTA is their
Excellent.
partner.
That's great.
So when will we know something about that?
So right now, the timeline is that the state of Florida is working towards becoming what is known as a beneficiary of this money. And in order to do so, they need to put together a mitigation plan to submit to the trust. So at this point in time, the tentative timeline is that the trust will actually take effect. They're projecting sometime late summer or fall of this year. At that point, Florida, within 60 days, needs to apply to become a beneficiary. And within 120 days of that, the states will be notified that they have become a beneficiary, or they're being designated to receive. In this case, Florida will be getting $152 million. From that point forward, the state of Florida has approximately 90 days to submit its mitigation plan. So if you add all that up, we're looking at probably sometime next fall that the money will become available. The first thing that the state of Florida has done, they issued a request for information to people who would like to participate with projects. Just to note that you did not have to submit to this RFI to be considered in the future. PSTA took advantage of the opportunity, submitted its RFI, and we submitted for both two projects. One was for hybrid electric buses, and the other one was for all electric buses. And even though there's $152 million available, PSTA submitted approximately for 100 million of that dollars. So that, the interesting aspect of that opportunity is that not only are the vehicles eligible for reimbursement, but also any cost for infrastructure and or administrative costs to actually carry out these projects. There's a couple of components in that. One is this is a unique grant opportunity in which that the $152 million is just for the state of Florida, so essentially we're going to compete against other entities in Florida. The other aspect is there's both a private side, which can go to private companies, but also there's a certain class just for governmental entities such as us. We actually fall in a class that is school bus and transit bus. So depending on how the Florida Department of Environmental Protection decides they want to divvy up that money, that's the Florida agency that's overseeing this. It could be a smaller pot of money, but yet it could be more opportunity because we're not competing against the private side, or in this case, with a lot of our federal opportunities, the state of California.
That's cool.
We'll see.
That could be huge.
It could be huge, could be
Could be
nothing, we don't know.
That's exciting to think about.
Yeah, I was really liking that 100 million.
That nice revenue.
Okay, so that was an informational item.
Yes.
Have questions about that? Future meeting subjects, Brad. So am I the only person that did not see
You
the
are.
minutes? Okay.
Which, if we have a one-on-one, I can.
Yeah, I don't think we
Wonder
need
you
to watch
with
an
that.
entire presentation.
Okay. It's okay. So we,
Your backup material.
future meeting subjects, we will have the budget as an action item, including the capital plan, on your September meeting agenda. I'm just trying to look here. This wasn't coordinated very well. There will actually be
A special meeting on the 6th, do we
the first budget hearing will be before your next meeting. So that wasn't done right. But I don't know if there will be much value in having a vote by the planning committee, but I mean, it would be for their second meeting, second budget hearing, which will be that night.
I mean, the 6 o'clock meeting?
Yeah, the 6 o'clock. But you'll have your first budget hearing September 6th prior to your next meeting on the budget. I think based on some discussion that we heard at the Finance Committee, which I also think would be good for the Planning Committee, would be for us to present again the some information about our benchmarking, which I love to do that presentation, so I'll be excited to put it together, where we participate in a benchmarking group comparing ourselves to other transit systems, and I try to give a presentation to the committees once a year on where we kind of stack up, but I'll start putting that together, I think. That would be good. Other than that.
Are you still on the board for that? You still an officer?
I am not an officer of that one, although I think everybody that's in the system, 20 transit systems, are all technically on the board or
I
whatever.
think a couple of years ago you
On APTA.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the benchmarking, as an annual meeting, where we go around and compare statistics. I think that pretty much covers it for now, unless there's any other.
Okay. Next meeting is September 20th at 10:30.
Yep.
We are adjourned.
Can I just
go
ask
ahead.
a question before? The regional transit feasibility plan that Scott Pringle is working on, do we know where that is? Who's managing that, or do we have, I've brought this up before, and I'm just kind of trying to get back into that.
They, well, I think as you know, or as I requested to them, Scott Pringle is traveling around the region and giving updates to key leaders, both business and governmental leaders. Chair Rice and I got a briefing, and I requested that you get a briefing. I don't know if he has made it to you. And then they're also making presentations and updates on their study to governmental entities. I know that the St. Pete City Council is getting a presentation. I don't know if the County Commission is getting one. And I heard yesterday that the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce is getting an update from Scott on that. Where I understand the project is they sort of they're finishing up their analysis of the selected corridors. They are now in the phase of looking at technologies, or what kind of transit would be in each of those corridors. And the latest round of presentations he's making are about that mainly. Who's managing the project? I mean, technically, Hart is the contract manager. Whether they're providing active management to Scott is unknown. I think he's getting a lot of direction from the Florida DOT still.
We need to be kept in the loop on that,
Yeah, well, he presented to us.
We
May.
presented, staff has been presenting this to you, so you have seen the presentation about the 5 corridors.
Right.
And the possible technologies. Staff goes to a strategic management team meeting once a month over at Hart to see where they are, and before they change any of their public presentations, we get a chance to take a look at it. So that's this afternoon. So we'll know more about that after Heather comes back from that meeting. But keep in mind that the Central Avenue BRT is not listed on that list of catalyst projects because it's already considered to be underway. The purpose of that plan is to find projects that are eligible for FTA funding through the Capital Investment Grant Program, bringing federal dollars to the region. We're already there. So when you look at the 5 projects, Project 0 is the Central Avenue BRT.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So now we are adjourned.
Okay.
Commissioner, could I ask you a question about nothing related to PSTA?
My pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Life.
Well,
Are you familiar with, they have asked us to fund and we apparently every year and And they've given us a list
Um,
of some.
I'll find out.
Sorry, I'm not done. Yes, thank you.
Says that-
Well, I said.